I think the first question I really do have for you is how has season three developed you think? I think it's been one of those things where season two was very polarizing. I think that's the nice way to put polar. I think that's the nice way to put season two. How has season three gone so far with all the updates and changes they made?
Yeah, you said season two was either hit or miss for a lot of people. Some guys came back, a lot of guys decided to take a break. But I guess the main storyline for season three so far has been every step in the right direction. Even more people are coming back. And then guys who said that they would take season two on the sidelines have decided to come back and get some of the action. So every single patch that has come out, you've seen a really nice positive reception from the fan base, whether you're a new player, whether you're an older player, whether you had already been enjoying Tekken 8 or you had a lot to say about it. A lot of players are starting to see the light. And it's almost as if what everybody was saying for these past few years about how the arcade release was really nice to have because it allowed those first 2 years to allow the developers to flesh out the game. You know, it kind of seemed to be what's happening now is that it's just that instead of having an arcade release, we had a simultaneous global release. So a lot of the players got to participate in a lot of the kind of continued play testing phase of the game because it is so deep and intricate and advanced that, you know, as the game goes on, you'll begin to see how like the game actually really does begin to take shape. Now that that's happened, you get what we have in season three.
Yeah, I mean that was the big thing here. Like for you as a competitor, and you've been playing Tekken for how long now? How many years has it been?
You put me on a spot. My first tournament was almost 25 years ago. It was in 2002, actually.
2002. Oh wow.
Yeah,
That I mean, I think I was like what Tekken 4 or 5.
yep.
I remember.
I can
picking up.
associate every year to like every Tekken to a year in my life. Starting from when I was like 10 years old, the game has been a big part of my life. So yep, good
I mean,
times.
my first Tekken was Tekken 3 as a kid on PS1, and then every like 2 years I'd hop back in, and I think 7, 8 is my first back-to-back Tekken that I actually. And Tekken 8 was never the first one I've really taken super seriously. I took season two off because I mean, it's one of those weird things I did. But overall, like for you, having gone through so many Tekkens, and for as a competitor, unlike other traditional sports, you have, each season is not only going to be different from the competition side, but the actual game will change, and function. So how is that kind of like different from a traditional sport where, you kind of know the rules and, very small rule change, but you are essentially going to be playing a different iteration of the same game every season, it feels like. Even from month to month, it feels.
Yeah, I guess you could draw some parallels to the traditional sports. I know in like a lot of the pro leagues, especially, they have like bargaining agreements. So although in a sense, the game of like say for example basketball doesn't change, maybe how the teams approach making the teams based on like the limitations on salary cap. So there are some factors that change from year to year. But I guess you could compare that to Tekken, where at the end of the day, it's still going to be a fighting game that's built around like a 3D engine with highs, mids, and lows. And every time that they make a new Tekken, it still feels like Tekken to me. If you take it at its core and you take away the heat and everything. So even with all the bells and whistles in Tekken 8, and even in Tekken 7, when we had the slow motion and the raised drives, at its core, it still felt like Tekken. So as a player who's been playing for 20 years, it was always comfortable to come back to Tekken, even after a long hiatus. And I think that's what a lot of players love about Tekken, is that no matter how many characters you add, how many moves you add, you come back to it, it's still going to be a lot of the same concepts and principles and ideas that you were applying when you were kind of younger, maybe, or were playing Tekken back in the day. So, the game changes, and I think part of being a competitor and part of being a professional a lot of times has to do with just adapting to the environment. And it could be, I guess, different to where other games, the more popular ones, get patches and changes even more frequently. So at least with the fighting games, they let us have time to develop the balance patches and the changes, and things start to simmer a little bit before they kind of try to overhaul or make any major changes. So it does still feel like Tekken end of the day, but I think that having the changes is nice because it keeps the game fresh as opposed to before, where during the first 10 years of playing Tekken, we'd get it on release and it would stay the same for the entire time until the next version. So I'd much rather have it be the way that it is now.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that I've noticed. Like, those early games of Tekken. So you did mention 2002. I talked to Jackie Tran, I think a couple months ago. And we kind of look back at the history of Tekken. Where do you think the turning point of the game was? Because it seems like it was very dominant from the U.S. players, and then Japan and Korea would have their moments. But when do you kind of see it turn to go from a very North American USA based game to Korea dominant, and then Arslan bringing the Pakistanis into the game? So when did you kind of see the shift started to make it from a stateside game to a global game that kind of that almost rivals Street Fighter to a degree?
I think we could credit a lot of the globalization of the game to the Tekken World Tour that made its debut, I think, in 2017. So that would have been in the second season or the first season of Tekken 7 on console release. So with the Tekken World Tour put the spotlight on a lot of regions, not only the ones that we've known for a long time, but the ones that haven't been featured as much, such as Pakistan, and also out there in South America, like the Peruvians and the Bolivians have been featured heavily at some of our tournaments. And it's done a really good job at not only doing that, but also making the local tournaments a part of the circuit as well. So now even playing at your local tournament, you can earn points and say that you're a player on the leaderboards on the global tour. So that did a really good job of putting a lot of people's ears to the competitive world of Tekken, which has been the challenge. Tekken has a really, really big fan base, a lot of players, sells a lot of copies, but I guess the challenge would be to get everybody up to date on what they got going on. If you want to take a further look at it, if you want to be more enthusiastic, you could take your love for Tekken to the next level. They got the competitive scene. So I think when Tekken 7 came out, and that really helped blow up the popularity of the game with all the guest characters and everything, and also coming out on PC for the first time, and then add the Tekken World Tour on top. I think that was really when everything kind of changed from it being just like a popular fighting game to like a competitive global scene where you got guys trying to fight for the crown. And not only that, we got like the big esports World Cup now and everything. So there are a lot of big prize pools in the mix.
Yeah, and then when did you first see me and that group play? I think it was me and Lohi, I believe, goes back that time. When did you kind of see them first? And what stood out to you about early days, and how much that whole scene has grown from seeming like this small group of Korean players to now they're depending on, it seems like whatever weekend you go, they're either one or two in terms of how things go. Like when did you first get your glimpse of that Korean play style and that Korean mindset to the game?
Right. So I would say before Tekken 7, like Koreans coming to the tournaments was definitely not as much of a common thing. You would see a lot of times videos here and there, and just traveling to major tournaments was not something that we didn't really have on a regular basis until Tekken 7, and a lot of like sponsors and opportunities came into the mix. So I guess like the Korean players or international players in general was something that you'd only see in videos or hear about in stories. I remember seeing the very first time Knee came to the United States. It was in my home city, Atlanta, Georgia, in 2009. So periodically, every few years, you'd have one or two Korean players. But I think, again, once like things became more official with the support of Bandai Namco themselves with the Tekken World Tour, you began to see more players take it seriously. And again, the support of like a lot of esports organizations definitely helps these players get a chance to travel and put their names out there. So it got really, really competitive right around the time that Tekken 7 started to be up as well. Back in the days, it was a treat to see those guys show up whenever they did, every now and then. But nowadays we see them all the time at these tournaments. So it's not as special anymore. Like I'm tired of taking all of our tournaments.
Yeah, and you mentioned Atlanta. It seems like there's a very strong presence in the southeast portion of the United States, Atlanta. I think Speed's also, isn't Speed down there too, or was down there too?
From Atlanta.
Yeah. So like, what is about like the regions? What do you think? There's a different kind of mentality when it comes to the different regions in the United States, because we are kind of like geographically the biggest region, like in terms of like the most spread out players. Do you think there's a sense of like different play styles across the United States, or is it kind of just like one of those things where it's we're just kind of like one region and we all have like a very similar play style?
I think when it comes to Tekken, and I think about like regional play styles, I think there's less of a distinction between like Southern USA or a Western United States compared to like United States as a whole versus Europe or Japan and Korea. I think there's more of like a different type of play style there, because I think with the help of online, it's helped bring this country kind of together where, you might have guys from the West Coast, East Coast, never get a chance to play head to head, face to face. They'll get a chance to train and practice together through net play. So with online Tekken being a super staple in the scene now, it's kind of helped bridge those far distances between the regions in the United States, but not so much from country to country. So you still see a lot of different play styles that stand apart and kind of like breed amongst themselves and kind of like get evolved. So when you travel to South America, all those guys who have been playing together play differently, and then in Korea, Japan, those guys play together differently. And so that's where the region-based Tekken kind of really stands out, is when you're talking about like globally.
Yeah, for me, I'm really coming back to Tekken here shortly. Just what kind of advice you kind of give newer players? Because like I said, I'm first time that I really taking the game seriously. I think I got to flame ruler last time. Yeah, not the flame ruler. I think that was like the highest rank achieved. But what do you say to beginners who want to start playing this game? And they always say the 10,000 hours rules. And what kind of advice do you give to players who want to jump into this? Because it seems like that's the beauty of esports, that people can just jump in and play the game that the pros are playing.
Well, I would say the biggest difference from when I was coming up back in the day versus now is that there's no shortage of resources that a player starting off even by themselves with no friends in the scene or anything, they have so much access to a lot of resources, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be within the game themselves. The developers do a good job of putting in these tutorials that help you learn the game. So if you utilize everything that you have available to you, where back in the day, it would take somebody years and years of experience and grinding and playing the game to just have that feeling of they're finally getting better. Now you got kids who've been playing Tekken 8, and Tekken's known as like a traditionally really hard game. In general, fighting games are not that easy. So you got kids coming up that are able to learn because they're watching these YouTube videos, going on Twitch streams, and they have direct access to maybe their favorite player or other players around the world who share similar characters, similar play styles, ideas. And the world is just more connected now than versus like the early 2000s when we were like downloading videos one match at a time for 30 minutes at a time. So definitely to take advantage of that, learning and downloading and absorbing. It makes it easier to live and breathe the game now. So if you really wanted to get in and get really good and get competitive, now it's never better. There's never been a better time. Excuse me.
Wait, so I think we're up to the same. You mean downloading with the risk of a virus and all the risk that comes with downloading?
I remember those days. They were fun, but it was like it's different because that thrill of like having that one match video ready. We won't have that anymore. So we're almost a little bit too spoiled now, because even within the game, you can download Knee or any one of your players' favorite like replays. So the game's done a really good job at helping players learn what was once like a really challenging thing. Like they've made it a little bit more accessible.
You mean no more trying to track frames by hand or by eye?
Everything.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Evo, because it seems like everyone talks about like the Evo circuit and everything they're doing. Like overall, what are your kind of like feelings toward like Evo growing to where it was? Because you did mention you've been competitive since 2002, and seeing Evo grow to what it has become is like, has that surprised you, or did you guys kind of have like the feeling that all it just takes is like time and the right platforms to show up for this to grow into what it's become?
It's been pretty fun to see Evo kind of expand, take things to the next level, especially with like the awards show, getting to recognize and celebrate a lot of the people that have put a lot of work into the scene, made it what it's been these last 20 plus years. Has been really nice to see it in a different light, like at the awards show or when we have these Evo exhibitions. That's been really cool. We had one with Tekken's former champions. So at this point, Evo's got a really long legacy and long history that to kind of just limit it to one fighting game tournament each year in Vegas would kind of be a sin. Like to see it now in Singapore or in what is it, France, or just to see it in a lot of different forms and a lot of different locations is only the next step. And what fighting games, how big they've gotten, a lot of players, a lot of new people coming into the scene these days, not only with Tekken, but every other fighting game. So like, it's only inevitable that Evo was going to kind of be at the forefront of all the growth. So it's been really cool to see. As far as being surprised, honestly, maybe not.
Wow.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, nice. For you, it's kind of, fighting games have a very unique idea where, you tend to be, if you have a rival in the game, you tend to be, it's kind of like mixed martial arts to a degree, where if you have a rival, like kind of like Justin Wong and Daigo, they're like, infamously they're tied together by one moment. But what does that say about the, like, kind of like the bond you build when you play this game, when you play fighting games that you kind of develop as you move forward in your fighting game. Because, like, you know, even for someone like me who isn't probably ever going to reach the highest of high levels, but I still have like bonds with people I've played and people I've, you know, what does that say about the community? Knowing that if you play someone in Tekken or even any fighting game, that there is kind of like this shared understanding of like, you know, whether it's like you're a beginner taking on like a pro and the pro kind of sees a little bit of yourself and what you aspire to. What's kind of like the bonds that come with like the fighting games community? Because it seems like, you know, it's very different because it's very intimate at times with how the game is kind of organized and structured.
Oh, certainly. You know, with fighting games, it's, a lot of times it's like you said, a lot of us didn't set out to kind of be the best in the world or to just be that guy at tournaments. A lot of us just might have started because we saw it at the arcade, started mashing buttons with the, then some random guy came in. Next thing you know, you're like buddies and everything. So with me, like the fighting game community and Tekken has been a part of my life for so long now. So definitely could relate to what you're saying as far as like the memories and the bonds being formed, being a big part of what makes the scene special. You know, a lot of people that I came up with were much older than me when I started playing video games. So having a lot of these like kind of role model type figures around and at all times just really helped my development personally, whether it not only just as a Tekken player, but as a person. And I've learned a lot from the people that I spent time playing fighting games with. So a lot of memories coming up and growing up over the years within the game, outside of the game, with the people that play the game. And because of that, you know, I've got to experience and so many really cool things. A lot of the jobs I got were due to the players from the scene. So yeah, so at the core of it all, it's just like one single game, but like it's cool to see how many different types of people it can reach, and also at the same time unite. Just a simple game and a simple community.
I know Evo, Combo Breaker, CEO, all these big tournaments are kind of celebrations of the fighting game, you know, at points of the year. But how big is the heart and soul of the fighting game community, which is your local and even regional event? Like you're going to Chain Shift this weekend, which is, you know, Southern California is probably one of their, you know, biggest tournaments of the year, and it's part of the Tekken World Tour. But you know, that's like that. But also they're you know, in Vegas here we have bragging rights and, you know, all the fun stuff here and, you know, the weekly events. So how big do you feel that local community to kind of like foster a relationship that allows people to not just have friends but grow in the game and kind of welcome people in? And how big is that local community? How big is it going to be moving forward as we try and grow our audience beyond what we have now?
Yeah, I think no matter how big that the games get, and at the highest, the biggest level on the biggest stages, the local tournaments are always going to be the heart of it all, because for a lot of people that are looking to make their entry into like the competitive game or to see where they stack up, for many people that local tournament is their first step. So it is kind of intimidating traveling, going to a big major. Maybe like, yeah, a lot of these majors are in big cities. So if you don't live in a big city, you'd have to travel a great deal. But it's nice to be able to play in a local scene, to meet a lot of people that know the locations that you know, like locally and everything, have things to talk about, like a shared kind of like common ground. So that's kind of why they're so important, is because that's where a lot of people get their first steps. And not only that, as is where all the, like, that's a lot of times you hear it, especially in Tekken, is that like having a strong local scene is the key to being like breeding these really, really top players. So at the end of the day, if you want to talk about the game itself and how to get like America or any other region like at the top of the world stage, is like having these strong local scenes, getting them really, really competitive with one another, and then traveling to other local scenes and beating them, was kind of how I remember it was back in the day. And I think that's kind of what we lost a little bit here in the States, is that we're not really as competitive from region to region. But back in the day, I think that's what helped us be really, really, really strong. Even when the information wasn't as widespread, you didn't have all these tutorials in the game. Like the American players were still able to do pretty well when it came to international talent, just because we wanted to beat each other up so bad.
Yeah. The last question, for you, did you ever imagine how much fighting games would carry you as far as it has gone? You know, between, you know, you're wearing the Red Bull hat right now, and just, you know, been able to see the world in various places and, you know, different parts of the world. Like when you started playing in 2002, did you ever imagine yourself seeing that fighting games was going to take you as far as it did, or was it really like, you know, or was it just something that, you know, I'll see how far it takes me? Because it's something that, you know, Daigo and I talked about last year was, you know, after 2004 when he briefly retired, he's like, you know, it wasn't necessarily, you know, that he didn't want to play anymore. It was just like reality caught up with him. Was there any point where you thought fighting games wasn't going to be your career?
Yeah, certainly. When I first started playing in the early 2000s, it wasn't really a thing in the fighting game community. Like, trying to become like a full-time professional gamer wasn't really a common concept. So it wasn't really a thing for me. And luckily, I was just a kid. So I was just a kid playing Tekken, and that's all it was. And as more Tekkens came out, I continued to play it, continued to become a stronger player. And it was just the competitive nature in me that kept myself playing. Not any desire to be a pro player or anything, but just maybe wanting to beat the next guy up and climbing that ladder. I was always the younger one, as I mentioned earlier. So it was just fun to tackle these older players and trying to see how a young kid like myself could beat these guys. And then, next thing you know, I'm at these tournaments. My dad was super supportive, and he drove me to these tournaments, and one thing led to another. And it was never really the motivation was never really backed by becoming a pro or getting sponsored or going because it was just so early. But at the end of the day, yeah, there were times where I definitely had to put Tekken in the back seat and take care of whether it be like going to school or getting a job as I got older. But I guess I got really, really lucky with the opportunities that I had. And he said had a really big opportunity to be a Red Bull athlete, the first one for Tekken. So it was a big opportunity that I cherished. And I was super, super lucky over these last 9 years to kind of experience the things that I got to experience as a full-time Tekken player. But yeah, it was always just part of the game.
Nice. You briefly touched on it, but your dad, driving you Tekken tournaments. Do you kind of see yourself? I know I think Junior right now is like King Rey Jr. is kind of like the player that a lot of us view highly as potentially going to make the breakthrough. You mentioned your dad driving your Tekken events. We all know that Junior has a very supportive dad. How big is having that support system? Do you feel for yourself when you were coming up, and how, like, without speaking to his situation too deeply? But how big do you think that's helped him kind of been able to kind of like chase whatever he's been chasing and get on team mentality and and now being able to go to Riyadh last year in EWC?
Man, I've been playing for so long. I remember my dad driving me to Jacksonville, Florida from Atlanta. That's like a 5.5 hour. King Rey Sr. was throwing tournaments. The kid was just born. He brought the baby to the tournament and was talking to my dad like, "Hey, my son's going to be a champion just like your son too." It was already his goal from the start. So like it's 19 years later, I'm still around for some reason. And this kid has actually grown up to fulfill his prophecy. It's really cool to see. It's always really nice to see parents supportive of their kids. Back in the days, it wasn't as common. But as time grew on and you had a lot of people setting as pioneers, as like the first pro gamers or being streamers and everything, a lot of kids nowadays grow up wanting to do these types of things. So whenever there's parents supportive, it's always like a weak spot of mine. I always find myself super supportive and a big fan of those types of guys, whether it be like King Rey Jr. and his father, King Rey Sr., or AK from the Philippines when he was like 13 years old, way back in the day. So because I had a very, very supportive father coming up in the Tekken scene, I know how important and really helpful it could be. So whenever I see guys like that, I always definitely got to cheer for them.
When was your first time playing Junior?
I actually don't remember. I do remember when I've always talked with his father over the years about like his Tekken journey. So I've definitely played him. Maybe it was 11, 12, 13, maybe check back in at 16, 17, maybe he went and played Minecraft for a little bit, came back. Now it's Tekken 8 and he's a full grown man, sponsored and traveling the world, and he's not even 21 yet.
No, that's the crazy thing is that he'll be walking into, I think next Thursday when you have the preview, he'll be walking into the Palace Station and he won't be able to do anything but be in that movie theater lobby.
Right, but anyway, he's so laser focused, he's not worried about anything anyways. So
yeah, he is so focused. Like that's the one thing I do like. Like he is so locked in when he's around. He's so locked in. So anyway, Anakin, thank you so much for your time. I know it's kind of like the busy season, so I wanted to get you before hectic and chaos hit. I really appreciate. And